Ronnie Cowan to move the motion.
Considered the UK's current drug policy. The UK drug policy is not just a combination of the Misuse of Drugs Act 1971, the Psychoactive Substances Act 2016, and a host of schedules and classifications. It's a range of laws which we've developed over years that have been put in place by our guided by our perceived knowledge and our current attitude. We put them in place because we thought it was the right thing to do, and it's my belief that we got it wrong. Out with the drugs law, we have laws that regulate the production, distribution, marketing and consumption of alcohol. And alcohol is an interesting case because it's not included in the 1971 Misuse of Drugs Act. Alcohol remains socially acceptable. It's consumed openly at christenings, naming ceremonies, weddings, civil partnerships and even funerals. At hatches, matches and dispatches, society finds a place for alcohol. But it wasn't always this way. Prohibition and abstinence were once very strong movements. But in the 1920s, some states in the USA made alcohol illegal and something strange happened. It didn't stop people drinking alcohol. What it did was it delivered the production, distribution and consumers into the hands of criminals who recognised a money-spinning venture when they saw one. The production became more potent, the product became more potent, because that meant distributing smaller quantities while maintaining profit margins, and criminal gangs used extreme violence to protect their territory from rival gangs or gangsters. The levels of violence spiralled, and more people were criminalised for using alcohol. According to the academic and historian Michael Lerner, as the trade in illegal alcohol became more lucrative, the quality of alcohol on the black market declined. On average, around 1,000 Americans died every year during Prohibition because of the effects of drinking tainted liquor. When Prohibition ended, levels of crime dropped dramatically and people's health improved. They continued to drink alcohol, but the product was quality controlled and monitored, and nobody had to use violence to protect their market. Alcohol continues to this day to damage people's lives and ruins people's health, but it's legalised, regulated, and increasingly people can find education and support because they have no fear of being criminalised. Maybe in an ideal world, everybody would be so happy and content, so free of stress and anxiety, so confident and self-assured that there would be no requirement for alcohol or indeed any recreational drugs. But we are not there, and we never have been. Throughout history, for a variety of reasons, people have taken drugs. 100 years ago, you could buy cocaine, heroin or morphine in pharmacies and department stores. During the First World War, Harrods sold kits with syringes and tubes of cocaine and heroin for the boys on the front line. Queen Victoria recommended wine laced with cocaine, Van Mariani. Anthony Eden was prescribed Purple Hearts during and throughout the Suez Crisis. They lived under what was termed the British system. It was a light-touch approach to drug consumption, one of tolerance and treatment. Things were changing during the 1960s. In 1961, the UN Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs was passed. It was not popular in the UK, because you can see here that the British system was working. In 1961, that convention, driven by prejudice, became the only UN convention ever to use the word evil. Torture, apartheid and nuclear war do not warrant the term evil, according to the UN. Genocide is referred to as an odious scourge or barbarous acts. The term evil is reserved for drugs, drugs that have previously been available in many different guises in high street pharmacies. The stigmatising of users went up a gear. And in 1971, through the Misuse of Drugs Act, criminalisation became the name of the game. The results have been years of violence, tensions, organised crime and a monumental increase in addiction. Certainly.
I congratulate the honourable member on this absolutely first-class speech he's making at the moment. Could he say, roughly, what proportion of the prison population are now, people in prison are there because of the drug trade? What are the costs to the criminal justice system? What is the total social cost of drugs? I hope he will cover these things in his speech.
Ronnie Cowan.
I didn't know it was a quiz. we all know, every one of us, I've got a prison in my constituency, I know, talking to the Governor 2 or 3 weeks ago, that the majority of people in that prison are there in some way, shape or form related to the consumption of drugs, or the selling of drugs, or the drug market and the violence around it. We also know that the number of drugs within our prisons are more available, particularly synthetic drugs available in our prisons than are available out in the streets. So the ONS, you'll be glad to hear, began collating consistent data on drug deaths in England and Wales from 1993, and figures show that an increase in drug misuse mortality rates amongst both men and women since 1996. UK opioid-related deaths rose between 2012 and 2015, increasing by 58% in England, 23% in Wales, 21% in Scotland and 47% in Northern Ireland. UK Focal Point on Drugs estimate the number of problem drug users is 300,000 in England, 60,000 in Scotland and 30,000 in Wales. Those statistics are results of the current drugs policy, and behind those statistics are lives in ruins. I can fully understand why people exposed to the cruelty inflicted on their loved ones by the current drug policy would want to lash out for retribution. If somebody provided one of my loved ones with a pill at a music festival and that pill killed them, my initial reaction would be to hunt them down like a dog and have them strung up. I would be wrong. At the next festival, another person would be selling the same drugs to more people and another tragedy would unfold. The understanding of this is exemplified by the members of anyone's child. These are people who have been directly affected by the loss or damage caused to a close friend or family member, and yet they understand that vengeance won't bring back their loved one or undo the damage done. They understand that unless we change our current drug policy and how we enforce it, more innocent people will die. It is their desire that their experience of loss does not fall on anyone else's family member or friend. And I would ask the Minister if she's prepared to sit down to meet and talk to members of anyone's child. Nothing.
Will the honourable member give way?
Certainly.
Graham Morris.
I'm grateful, and I would like to congratulate the honourable member for Inverclyde on initiating debate, on making some really powerful points in his speech. He and I both attended the recent meeting of the Drugs, Alcohol and Justice All-Party Parliamentary Group on drugs-related deaths, and we heard Rudy Forster QC explain how policies could be readily implemented to reduce drug-related deaths, drug and alcohol-related deaths. And would he agree with me at this point that it would be a good thing for ministers to meet with Rudy Forster QC and see what policies could be applied instantly that would make a big difference?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's always really good for me when I hear people like Rudy Forster, a QC, who's a person who's lived his life through the law, is looking at the current situation and thinking, we have to change it. It backs up everything I believe, but he comes from a much more qualified background in that term than I do. And I wonder if the government are actually engaging with people of his calibre. Last week in Canada, joined 9 states of the USA and Washington DC to legalise recreational cannabis. They've taken a different approach in various states regarding the age limits. Some Canadian provinces will allow people to grow their own, limiting them to 4 plants. Other provinces do not allow home growing. We should be looking to those parts of the world to gather evidence and decide if their approach is beneficial and if we should follow suit. Canada has the same problems we have, but like Portugal and Uruguay and others, they've taken a different approach to providing a solution. And it's not drugs for everybody, it's regulate the marketplace, take away controls from the criminals. In the UK, parents of children that fear their child could be dabbling in drugs or even developing a habit are extremely reluctant to engage with support groups that could divert that child from the path they are on. And the parents are reluctant because they don't want to place their child on the police radar. They fear they could be arrested, get a criminal record or even be sent to prison. Early intervention can be the key to avoiding drug-related harm, and we should not be putting obstacles in the way of those that could be affected. We must encourage users to engage without fear of prosecution and free up valuable police time and resources to fight crime. Can the Minister tell me if the UK government has engaged with other countries to access their research, which could assist us in becoming better informed and help us to take an evidence-based approach to legislation? And we need to listen to those affected. that can see a need for change, but are not in a position to affect it. Prior to this debate, the Westminster Digital Engagement Team put out an appeal on social media advertising this debate and asked the people of this country, what do you think? Their responses, which they've furnished me with, are they're engaged with nearly 20,000 people, and the majority of people came back saying legalise cannabis. Some call for drugs to be regulated and taxed. A few commentators said they'd lost loved ones as a result of the current policy, and some commentators called for drug addiction to be seen as a health issue rather than a criminal one. Lots of commentators called for the UK to take the same approach as Portugal. That's the people of this country talking. The problematic users, the kids in the estates recruited to county lines, the medical professionals, the support workers and the law enforcers should be listened to. Peter Blexley was a young cop during the Brixton riots. He went on to become one of the Met's most celebrated undercover agents. He was a founding member of SO10, Scotland Yard's dedicated covert policing unit. He said, "I look back now and I think, well, are there less drugs and guns in the streets because of what I and my colleagues did?" And of course the answer is an emphatic no. We could wallpaper my bedroom with commendation certificates. They sit in the loft gathering dust. What a waste of time. Certainly.
Mary Glindon.
Congratulate him on this debate. And does he agree that the fact that the UK government spent an estimated £1.6 billion on drug law enforcement in 2014-15, and then drug treatments being cut by 14% in the last couple of years? And does he agree really that that's a false economy, especially as Public Health England estimates that for every £1 spent in drug treatment, there's a £4 social return?
Ronnie Cowan.
I absolutely agree. If that money on the criminal justice system was spent and we can see the results, I'd back off and say, well, it's working, but it clearly isn't. And take that figure further down the line, every £1 spent at early intervention saves £7 in the criminal justice system further down the line. So even though I've said to people before, if you don't give a damn about these people, it makes good financial sense anyway to step in and get early intervention. Peter's not alone. For a host of personal testimonies gathered by UK elite law enforcement against prohibition, I'm going to offer just 4 more from these experts. In Afghanistan, I fought on one front line of the so-called war on drugs, and in Hackney, I live side by side with the other, and it's obviously failing at either end. If real generals pursued an active war like generations of politicians have pursued this farce, they'd be court-martialled and sent to prison. That's from Patrick Hennessy, British Army officer Grenadier Guards serving in Afghanistan. Far from making communities safer, current drug laws have the unintended consequence of placing barriers between the police and often vulnerable individuals. Paul Whitehouse, Chief Constable. The drug problem will continue and escalate if governments fail to recognise that the only way forward is to move towards nuanced regulatory models, thus removing the profit from criminals and the motivation for their involvement. Graham Seaby, former Detective Superintendent, International and Organised Crime Branch, New Scotland Yard. The single greatest crime reduction measure the world could take would be to regulate the supply of cannabis, cocaine and heroin. Francis Wilkinson, Chief Constable. Neil Woods, 14 years an undercover drugs cop, would say exactly the same things. Ron Hogg and Arfon Jones, both police and crime commissioners, say that drugs must be a health issue, not a criminal justice one. Every time we lock up a criminal gang and announce to the media that we've seized a large quantity of drugs with a street value of so many millions, what they don't say is that that supply has been disrupted for an hour or so. But for another gang, will step into their shoes and maintain the distribution. Often these takeovers involve a spate of violence, and they are always maintained by violence and the threat of violence. The fact is that after 30 years of locking people up, a bag of cocaine will cost £10 in 1980, will cost you £10 today for the same weight. But because cocaine is so plentiful, it is purer today in the UK than it has ever been. The damage being inflicted on people and communities shall continue to increase if all we do is crack down on the criminal fraternity and those ensnared in problematic drug use. We can lock people up for longer. It does not improve the situation one iota. In fact, it makes it worse. Will the Minister meet and listen to members of law enforcement against prohibition? In July 2017, the UK Government published its drug strategy, and they announced they were going to appoint a recovery champion whose role was defined as someone who will be responsible for driving and supporting collaboration between local authorities, public employment services, housing providers and criminal justice partners, ensuring that these critical public services are able to contribute fully towards securing effective outcomes for individuals suffering drug dependence. 15 months later, there is still nobody in the role, so nobody is coordinating those aspects of the support and the recovery programme. I find myself wondering if there is a UK Government harm reduction recovery programme. Minister, when will you appoint a recovery champion? As legislators, we do have a choice. We can change the law, and in doing so, we can address the harm that drugs do. Before that, we have to take a constructive approach to our drugs policy. We need to accept the fact that 90% of people who use recreational drugs do not live chaotic lives. We must acknowledge that of the 10% of users that become problematic users, the majority have suffered physical, psychological or sexual abuse. We must acknowledge that problematic use is higher in areas of social deprivation. We must accept the responsibility of trying to find solutions and acknowledge our failures. We need to help people with problematic drug use with harm reduction treatment and wraparound support. Criminalising users doesn't deal with the underlying issues that lead to drug use, it only makes things worse. We should have a network of safe drug consumption rooms throughout the UK. They have proved to be a success in Switzerland, Canada, Spain and a growing number of other countries. We must be prepared to learn from other countries' experiences. The emergency services should carry in naloxone and be trained in its use. Will the Minister reconsider the legalisation of safe drug consumption rooms and ensure naloxone is provided for members of the emergency services? And most importantly, the UK drug policy should be a health issue, not a criminal justice one. Or we can continue to criminalise users, drive them into the hands of unscrupulous dealers while ignoring the atmosphere of fear that they live in. And all we do is marginalise them, stigmatise them and ostracise them. Briefly.
Mr. Blunt.
Just moved on to the subject of drug consumption rooms. But did he note, after his last debate on drug consumption rooms, that the International Narcotics Control Board then produced a report on it, effectively endorsing drug consumption rooms, and that coming from the body that is responsible for the international enforcement of the relevant drugs conventions, which I know he and I both think are outdated and, frankly, dangerous in what they actually deliver in terms of global consequences around drugs policy. But if even they are in that place, hopefully our government will be able to take some notice.
Ronnie Cowan.
I did indeed. I noticed a couple of things after that last debate. We had that debate in this House, and the Minister of that debate denied the fact that Canada had kept their drug consumption rooms open because they were effective. She made the statement that the Supreme Court had ordered them to stay open. And on the back of that, the Canadian Drug Policy Coalition, the Canadian HIV and AIDS Legal Network, the International Centre for Science and Drug Policy wrote to myself and the Minister a 5-page letter detailing how the DCRs work effectively in Canada and why they'd kept them open, described her statement as factually or legally incorrect. So, in closing, we have lost the war on drugs. Our own drugs policy saw to that. We need to change our mindset and we need to ensure we're in a position to win the peace. And finally, Mrs Moon, can I say to everybody that when we see a problematic drug user, we are watching a person drowning. Please throw them a life belt. Do not push their heads further under the water.